The KGB wanted to know what they were doing, wanted to keep up with them. And so the oil men, as a routine thing, would be sitting in their hotel rooms and looking, and there would be a portrait on the wall, a painting of some sort. And they would see, coming down from the bottom, a wire. And look behind the portrait, and there was a microphone. They would go to their offices. All of these guys were very suspicious, and so they had sweepers, these sweepers that measure these, if there's a microphone present, and the offices would be filled with microphones, with bugs. They would remove the microphones, come to the office the next day in the morning, sweep again. The office is filled with microphones. The KGB would come during the evening with these, with their teams and reinstall microphones in these offices, dig into the holes, and then plaster them over. This created such an atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia that the British ambassador at that time described to me how one time he and the local BP representative wanted to conduct a very sensitive bit of conversation. So they went out onto the seashore, and they're walking along the sea, and as they're going, they notice that a car drives up, and a dog jumps out. And as they're walking, the dog is following them. And every time they talk, the dog's tail is going up. They're going, what are those dastardly Russians up to now? And they went back to the office. And when I interviewed this ambassador, I said, come on, you didn't really think that this dog is bugged? How would they make the tail go up and down? He said, who knew? These oil men and the diplomats who came onto the Caspian at that time, on both sides of the Caspian, were dealing with a type of negotiator, the local negotiators with whom they were dealing. They had never met anywhere else in the world. Murat Manafov. This was an Azeri negotiator for a short time. And in the first session that he conducted with the oil men, he said, why don't we become acquainted? Everyone passed around their business cards. So this group began trading business cards, introducing themselves. Then it came time for him, Manafov. And he reached into his jacket and he pulled out a 9mm pistol and he slapped it on the table. This was his calling card. These deals eventually were done on both sides of the Caspian, in Kazakhstan and in Baku. Then began the real challenge. And the challenge being, how do you get that oil out? Because oil in the ground is worth nothing. But as you can see, the whole region is landlocked. Unlike the Middle East, unlike West Africa, there's no sea. There's no sea to take the oil out. They had to find a pipeline route. They had to build pipelines to get the oil out. And this took on geopolitical significance. When Bill Clinton came to power, he brought along with him an old buddy from college, Strobe Talbott. Strobe Talbott, he was named the Deputy Secretary of State and the point man on Russian policy and on former Soviet policy, the whole former Soviet Union. Clinton regarded Talbott as the smartest man he had ever met on Russia. But Talbott's understanding of Russia was founded in literature, in music, in art. He had a romantic view of the region. Like a lot of us, he couldn't get out of his mind that moment in August 1991 when Boris Yeltsin stood on that tank and prevented the Soviet Union from reverting to its Soviet past. This romantic idea that Russia was going inexorably in a reformist, pro-Western, non-threatening direction came to be American policy at that time. And Talbot believed that no other policy, no other analysis from another part of the former empire ought to interfere with that goal. And he had a point. Russia itself said, we are the inheritor of the Soviet mantle. We've assumed the debt of the Soviet Union. We've disarmed the Soviet Union. Therefore, we deserve the asset side of the ledger too. What's the asset side of the ledger? These oil fields. The oil fields on both sides of the Caspian Sea, across which these oilmen, these Western oilmen, were crawling like ants in Russia's view. But that opinion of Russia's and that opinion of Talbot's did not hold. It couldn't hold. Underneath Talbot, a groundswell of opinion formed among the junior officers in the State Department, on the National Security Council, in the Energy Department, opposing this point of view. These junior officers felt that Russia was a threatening power, was a dangerous power. And why? It was based in what they saw going on in Central Asia and the Caucasus. In, pardon me, 1993, Russia was responsible for the near dismemberment of Georgia. I lived there at the time, and I was reporting with a colleague from the Financial Times, and he came back from his own reporting one day to the apartment, and he told me that he had encountered in a field just west of the capital, Tbilisi, a field with Russian tanks in it. And he said that he had gotten to talk to one of the tank drivers, and that the fellow told him that he had come from Sukhumi, from the Russian military unit here. This part of Georgia had just broken away from the rest of Georgia. And this Russian unit had fought against the Georgians in order to help that part of the country break apart. And that precipitated the whole west of Georgia marching on East Georgia in this Yugoslav-type ethnic conflict. Russia did not want Georgia to disintegrate. So this tank driver said that his unit commander asked for volunteers. Who will save Georgia? And these are the tanks that were sent to help. The same year, I went to Baku and interviewed the deputy defense minister, who was bitterly complaining how the Armenians the Russians were helping the Armenians to fight here in Nagorno-Karabakh, helping to take this part of Azerbaijan away and make it part of Armenia. And I said, how do you know? How do you know that Russia is helping these Armenians? He said, well, because they were helping us last year. Russia did not only fan the flames of these small wars, it also strangled economies. And it did so through its iron umbilical cord. Iron umbilical cord, this is a really important term. It was coined by one of these junior officers underneath Strobe Talbot, Sheila Heslin, a junior director on the National Security Council. She was referring to the Soviet-era natural gas and oil pipeline system that required every barrel of oil, every cubic meter of natural gas produced in this whole region to pass through Russia on its way out. No oil, nothing, no natural gas could be produced, could be exported without Russia saying, Yes.